It's 20 years since you started your started recovery from drink and drugs. It was in your teens that you started first taking drugs, is that right?
No, I started taking drugs before I was even a teenager.
Really?
My auntie used to come down to my mum's with temazepam tablets because he was on medication. They were like eggs, and I remember she gave me one when I was about 8, 9. And
for what purpose? I'd have one of these.
Yeah. Well, she was a terrible alcoholic. She was a kleptomaniac. She'd always been getting arrested for shoplifting. She was great. She was a character.
Yeah.
And she'd turn up and and I remember she gave me one. It was like a 10 mil or something. And I took it and I started to wobble. I was like, whoa, I like to feel it. Like, whoa. It took me away. It took me away from the moment and the atmosphere of the house. And then when she came down, I used to take them out of a bag and that. And then it was something else. And then it kind of that stopped. It wasn't like I was in the grip and that was it. It kind of it was just a period. She'd only ever turn up every so often. It wasn't all the time. She lived out the way. But, started joining boxing and, we enjoyed the sport. I wanted my dad to support me and acknowledge me. So I'd done it sort of to show him, you know what I mean? And to receive the love from him as well at the same time. But, the attention was sort of brushed aside. I wasn't really showing that kind of initially until I started winning fights, and then he turned up and then it was too late because I'd already gained a little bit of confidence. I was getting approval from other people. I had other role models. I had a coach, I had a trainer, I had friends in the gym. My dad then was like, it was just too late. You turned up too late. You've destroyed my youth, from an early age with your violence and your physical kind of abuse. And, I was subjected to, my mum was subjected to, and I didn't understand anything about ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences until years later. And realised that the contributing factors that led to who I was and what I became and the way I behaved was because, it was all about the fear. And I was trying to mask it all and bury it and suppress it. And I'd use anything to block it all out. But then it surfaced again when the drugs evaporated or they were non-existent, you know what I mean? When they're gone.
So were you just constantly chasing that kind of escapism?
I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah. It sounds like you've done loads of work on yourself to understand that, because a lot of people don't know what it is that they're running away from. You're talking about, the things that you identify with in other people. You can see that there's a void they're trying to fill. They're looking for help and support. And do you have any anger or frustration around that, or have you kind of made peace with it? Because there's a lot of people who would be, furious, and because you've identified they were the contributing factors to you taking, one path when you could have taken the other fork in the road.
No, it's like you've got the key is acceptance. It's empathy and understanding, and sort of putting yourself in someone else's shoes and going, okay, so what was going on for them?
It's not an easy thing to do, though. No. So that's a huge thing.
I'll tell you when it all changed for me. Right, I had loads of anger early on, right, loads of blame. If it wasn't for you, and if it wasn't for this and that, I wouldn't be in this situation, and I wouldn't be in prison because of the things you made me do, and it was all that.
Yeah.
And then I went into rehab. I got clean. I was there for about 6 months, and then they gave me. It was in Bristol, and I had to go to Liverpool for the weekend. Home leave. It was like a little bit of trust. Go and visit your family. My mum wasn't with me dad at the time, and I remember it was a Friday. Landed at my mum's. Tried to do the main share in front of my old family, my brothers and sisters. They were all laughing at me. Well, these are your feelings now, fucking hell. You know what I mean? Didn't go down well. But my dad was always at the top of me, my mind all the time. I hadn't seen him for a very long time, and I remember going. It was like mid-November. It was snowing. It was quite cold. I found out he'd lived in this hostel on Old Road. And I had my little niece with me. She was 5 years old. And I went up to visit him. I think it was the Saturday, Saturday afternoon.
And this was when you were on leave?
Yeah, and I was leaving on the Sunday. And I just wanted to see him, because he's just, he's an alcoholic by this time. And it was weird because I went into this hostel and it was freezing. He was in this room with this little heater. He had this flat cap on. And he didn't look as intimidating as he did when I was growing up. And I went, all right, Dad. He went, who's that? It's me, your son Billy. He went, oh my God, come in. So I went in with Aunt Megan, and it was mad because he looked at me and I looked at him, and for that moment, I saw all the pain, all the heartache, all the guilt, all the shame, everything in his eyes for that moment. You know, it was just the oddest, most peculiar feeling I've ever experienced, because he knew it and I knew it, and we both turned away. And I just sort of made me excuses, good to see you, and I was walking away, and I had tears like just rolling down my face, and it was like, I think it was at that moment I sort of forgave him.
Yeah.
But
nothing was said. That was literally just a look.
Yeah, nothing was said. It was like, it was just a look, and it was like I could see into his soul.
Wow.
Like the very depths, and I could see all his pain and all his heartache, and I thought, wow, he's suffered enough, you know. And then I think after that we had like a relationship for like the last 10 years of his life, which was one of just me going to his, sitting there for about an hour with no one talking.
Just literally being in each other's company.
Yeah, just sat there.
But that's what...
Dad. Yeah. And
that was the end of it. But that's something that you'll be able to take with you forevermore, because obviously he passed away and you've been able to make peace with that.
Yeah, because he'd be paid for like me driving lessons, and you know, you could see he was trying to make amends.
Yeah.
He'd never say I love you. Oh, I don't love you, son, you know what I mean? He was never at that. He was never at that touchy-feely, huggy type. He'd do it in other ways, and I could see that. You're all right, son. Oh, yeah, your mum told me about that girl breaking your heart there, lad. Could talk to me, you know. Oh. And I used to go, okay.
It's a different generation.
Yeah, so I used to just agree with him, and that was that, really.
And so, obviously, we talk about your upbringing. You moved into, you mentioned you'd been in prison.
Yeah.
I cannot fathom the statistic. Is it right that it's 18, 20, something like that, prisons in 18, 20 years in total?
Oh, 20,
20 years you've served in 22 prisons.
24 prisons. It
24 prisons.
So it was like, when I tallied it up, just like, you know, lying there, one like going, okay, my first sentence was 12 months, so that's a year. Then I got my second sentence, it was 3 years. And then I done that was another 4 years. And then I done another 3.5 years. And then I was like, I did it all together. And like, yeah, I got another 3 years there, another 2 years there. And I was like, oh my God, that's like 18, 19 years in prison behind a cell door. You know what I mean? Out of my life. And I've been to that many institutions because of me, the way I was, like fighting, or I was very volatile, very angry, reactive. You know, I'd end up getting moved out of one prison and sent to another, and feeling rejected when they'd get me to the gate and they go, we don't want him here. I was like, well,
history just repeating itself.
Yeah.
You'd always, so have you always been chasing acceptance?
I have, yeah.
And what was the point at which, because you seem so at peace now, you know, you spend a lot of your time helping other people. 2 questions that I want to come to around that. One, was there a particular point where it's like, I've accepted that these things have happened to me and now I've got a choice, and so I want to kind of pay it forward?
I think when it was like, I was going through like the recovery process in the early days, and he had a great counsellor. He was talking about, you know, owning my part in it, and taking acceptance of accepting like my role in life and how I reacted, and then trying to picture yourself in other people's situations. It kind of helped, you know how I not blaming myself, but owning parts of like the way I've reacted. So I think there was a lot of work to do. It was like a lot of therapy, you know, DBT, CBT, you know, the cognitive behaviour therapy, ACEs with the adverse childhood experiences, step work, writing about my anger issues, my resentments, writing about, like, I wrote a couple of books, basically, in the end, eventually, that was my life. So, you know, I've wrote 2 books, both of them. Like, I've had 2 biographies before I'm 45.
It's
You know what
fun.
I mean?
Yeah, but you've also had a life that most people don't experience, you know, to be in that position. Because my other question was going to be around, you talk about, you know, you're being passed from pillar to post in institutions, feeling the rejection again of we don't want them here because, and you take full responsibility for your actions. What are your thoughts around, you know, the kind of that culture today and what happens in prisons, and do they get enough help and support? Because you've spent some time supporting people in prisons.
So the last time I was in prison was 2018. As recent as that, right? That was I'm like that. I'm going to prison. I've just come out of a rehab. I've owned, like, I've been arrested. It was all over the news. It was all over the paper. It was quite embarrassing, to be fair. But he had to kind of just like admit and accept that, you know, I've got a problem with addiction, and it took me down his path, and I ended up doing something I didn't want to do. And I found myself going to rehab, getting clean. I was paid for by these producers, which cost a fortune. So when I came out, I went to court. I thought the judge is going to see the contributing factors, the mitigating circumstances, you know, the cancer, you know, the addiction, you know.
Because that's when you relapsed, wasn't it?
Yeah, like, you know, the fact that you haven't been in trouble for over 10 years and you've been a role model in the community.
Yeah.
You've had a brief period that's engulfed you, and you've gone full at it, and you've broken to your neighbour's house who you had resentment with because you wanted more money. It was embarrassing. And I'm standing in the courts, and I'm thinking, you know, there's a 90% chance he'll just go, okay.
Yeah, slap on the wrist.
Not a slap on the wrist as such, you know. It's not going to save. It's not going to be in the public interest to put me in prison. You know, I'm not in addiction. I'm not like
a threat to society.
No, and I'm not a bail. You know, I'm not. Look, what happened was, he's looked at me previous and went, okay.
He's judged the book by its cover.
Yep. So I'm putting you in prison for 2.5 years. And I went to prison, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do here? And I stayed clean, and I helped people in there, and I was a mentor and a role model for other inmates. Which I felt at the time, it was meant to happen. It needed to be, because I needed to be removed from society, and I needed to sit down, and I needed to reflect on my life. And that's when I started to write my second book, which was called Fighting for My Life. But at the same time, it gave me an opportunity to see and observe what the prison establishment was like, and it was just totally changed, because I hadn't been to prison since, for over what? Oh my God, like, it must have been about 18 years since I'd been in Bolton. So the whole process of...
So you saw a completely different side to it?
Yeah, I saw people...
Because you got no help and support in terms of rehab, etc. when you were first sentenced?
No, there was nothing like that.
Cold turkey and just left to your own devices?
There was no interventions. I had to climb on prison roofs and protest just to get some attention. And that's where it took me. Violence down a block. Just trying to remove myself from normal location and keep away from the population, and just be in a cell, isolated, because I thought everyone else was the problem. If I'm on my own and I can't get on, I'm okay, right? But it was like a lonely place to be, you know what I mean, for a long time. Yeah, and when I went this time, I kind of observed, and I thought, the people in prison are banged up 23.5 hours a day. They get opened up for half an hour for the shower, this, that and the other. There's a lot of suicides. There's a lot of like violence. There's a lot of drugs. The medics or the hospital or whatever, they maintain them now on methadone, which I don't think's right, to be fair. I think they should wean them off the drug that they're on and give them a fighting chance when they get out,
rather than get them addicted to a new one.
Yeah, because okay, we'll put you on methadone, but we'll maintain you till you get out, and then you got to go back on it
on your own devices.
You're not going to change.
Yeah.
When you get put in prison, the old school, when you put in prison, you get nothing. There you go, do it. And you've got no choice, then you can get on with it. You know what I mean? Now it's all...
You talk about it so kind of calmly and so relaxed, because like that is my idea of how being on my own, I love my own company to a point, but if it was forced and being on my own, I think I'd really struggle with. I am the person who needs complete and utter freedom. I like to be able to make loads of choices, and the thought of having that taken away just... You know, it really baffles me. I can't even fathom it. But it's really interesting to hear the sides of it where it was like, actually, you were reoffending, because of the addiction. You didn't want to be in there. When you were in there, you were doing whatever you could to segregate yourself from everybody else. You touched upon the fact that you are an author, and it would be remiss of us not to talk about this because both books were written during stints in prison.
Yeah, exactly,
Is that because you were left with your own thoughts and it was a case of,
because I
was it therapy for you?
It was it was cathartic. I was on my own. I was thinking to myself, you couldn't invent this. I had to write these experiences down, and obviously my first book was like, it was
a phenomenal success. So much so that it was turned into a movie.
And when like I was writing that, I was thinking, I was reading bits of my book to other inmates in Wandsworth when I got repatriated from Thailand, and they were like looking at me, shocked, like, whoa. And I thought, I'm not getting any identification here. I'm talking about some guy who's stabbing himself with an ice pick. He's got blood squirting out of every orifice because he's took himself hostage, like that. And trying to explain this to this guy, and all I was thinking about was, while everyone's watching him, I'll go and get some hot water.
So this we need to touch upon because you've obviously just mentioned it briefly, because that was you were repatriated after a few years, come back to finish your sentence in the UK. But this stint that we're talking about, where you wrote your first book, where you had to write everything down and get it all out of your head, it is, for those who've never read the book or those who've never watched it, was called Prayer Before Dawn. So this book was based upon your time in Thailand, and you were in prison for holding like mobile phones. What was the reason?
Don't get me wrong,
what was the real reason?
That was a mobile phone, but there was a lot behind it. There was like, I was involved in crystal meth, and not crystal meth as much. That was more inside prison. It was more yaba, which is a form of like methamphetamine, which is in tablet form. So because of my addiction, I'd relapsed back out. I'd relapsed in Thailand. And I was
you were clean when you went out there?
I was clean. I worked for Sylvester Stallone.
We need to get to that. Hold on.
We'll get to that. But I had a great life initially. It was exciting. It was new. It was thrilling.
What caused the relapse?
Our relationship. Meeting someone couldn't deal with the feelings. Didn't know how to cope. The only solution I thought to the problem was to pick up a drink or a drug and mask it.
Run away.
Put a plaster over the pain, which, you put a plaster on a disaster. That's what happens, and you still got to peel it off. And I've met this girl. It's broke down, and I broke down with it, and I picked up a drug, and I hit the ground hard, and I hit it fast, and I'm picking up other substances that I'd never come across before. I'm smoking opium, China White, yaba, which is translated as crazy drugs. So I'm taking this methamphetamine. I'm buying phones, I'm selling to tourists. But I'm quite, in my mind, clever. I won't get caught with drugs because I know the score, and I've been around prisons and I know where you can secrete them. So I'm quite,
quite savvy with it all.
Yeah, I'm street smart. And when they came through me room door, the drugs were secreted. There was a few weapons, like a gun and a stun gun and a samurai, and there were loads of phones. It was just crap all around the room. It was just a mess. And they've come in, and they've had me on the floor, and I'm thinking, this gun and these weapons, and didn't even think about the phone, right? Wasn't too concerned about the parcels because they were plugged. And then when they got me down to the police station, and then she shoved this phone in my face. And I knew bought it off someone. It was called Lakshay Khonjon, which is Thai for handling stolen goods. And I was like, yeah, and what? Anyway, you steal? I went, no, I bought it off someone. He went, okay, you buy it. So in the end, I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't understand much. They were shaking me keys at me and pointing at my bike and saying I'd stolen that. And I'd already bought it. It was mine, you know what I mean? It's never had the paperwork. All the other stuff got confiscated. I'd never seen that. And I thought, that's quite odd. That's what I was expecting.
That's the reason I'd expect to be.
Yeah, and then when I found out later on, like every man and his dog's got a gun in Thailand, and it wasn't really worth a sentence, you know what I mean?
But the handling stolen goods and the phones was the reason.
So 3 years.
Oh, God.
So 3 years for a phone. So when I went to court, I was handling a stolen phone. I was taking to the brief, and he went, "Oh, very serious, very serious." And I was like, "Well, a phone. Oh, I shouldn't even be here." Goes to court, rapid sight, gets spat at me, didn't understand a word. Still baffled and confused, going downstairs. had these shackles on, like in like a chain gang, following everyone else. And he was like, what happened there? And it's only until I got back, he went, oh, you're 3 years. I said, what, 3? Who, me? And he went, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, you're messing.
3 years in a Thai jail. It was actually split because you were moved from one jail to another, one prison to another.
Yeah, I went to Chiang Mai for a year, and then I went to Klong Prem for 2, give or take. 18 months, give it 18 months in each.
But what you saw during that time was completely different to what you'd experienced in UK prisons.
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah,
so just to put that into some sort of context, because obviously I've done my research into this and I can't even get my head around it. You witnessed rape, murder, thrown in a cell with another, what, how many? 80 to a cell? 80
to a cell. So this was like, for me, when I initially walking into a prison, right, I'm the only white face in a sheer brown fucking Asian faces. I'm in this compound. The whistle's blowing. I'm watching everyone and just observing what's getting on. Everyone's washing themselves down. The whistle goes again. You dry yourself off. The whistle goes again. You sit down. Everything goes on this whistle. Then we're all marching to the whistle to this room. Goes in this room. Look down and there's just the sheer faces looking up at me. And I'm just like acting hard and soft but scared at the same time. God, I'm full of fear. No one speaks English. I'm getting told, yo, because they're all going to places. They all know where they're going. I'm just left at the last man standing thinking, where am I going here? And he, right at the far cesspit of the pad cell, was like a toilet, and there was a lady boy and there was this like figure lying down, and it was just like a tight space. There was enough room for me. I went there and I sat there with my back against this wall, with my knees up to my chest like that, just like, fucking hell. And then I had this conversation with this lady. Well, hello, where are you from? You know, and I was asking questions about, well, you know, where's he asleep and what's going on? He's dead and we can't move him. So, you know, I had to sleep next to a guy who died. A lady boy called Tiffany with this top on. I remember it. No money, no honey. Mad boob tube. And these little denim shorts with this crazy bulge. And I was like, and she kept looking at me going, you have lovely blue eye. I was flattered initially. I was like, oh yeah, nice. But then I was like, whoa. But yeah.
So this is one cell for 80 people.
80 people, yeah.
Sharing, did I hear right? Shared, because this is my, like, sharing 2 toilets. 2
toilets, and both sort of like one, yeah, there was a left and a right one here. And there was a bin in the middle, like a black, you know, like a dustbin, that had a little pipe that was like dripping water in it. And you'd use like a bowl to, because like the toilets aren't flushed. You just got to do the you know, like putting the water down and sluices. So they're washing the backsides with the same bowl, brushing the teeth, washing the faces. It was just a mess, you know what I mean? There's no compartment. So when I had like, my stomach was in bed, and I remember like sitting there and just feeling so self-obsessed.
Yeah.
With like 80 people just staring at me. Thinking, I'm on a Louis, you know what I mean? And they're coming over smoking cigarettes going, hello, Farang, you okay?
Just in the middle of having a bit.
Yeah,
I've got diarrhea.
Swear, it was horrible. I was like,
I'm laughing at it, but this was actually real. Yeah. Like, I think I'm laughing because it's so unfathomable.
Yeah, it's like the height of like what's going on, but then you get used to it.
I'm sorry, but you get used to it. Hold on, we're talking about, and you just passed over the fact that there was a dead body.
Yeah,
because
he had an heart attack. He was overweight. He was.
But they left him in the cell. Yeah,
because it was a bank holiday, a Thai bank holiday, and it's just like, so for 2 days he was there, right? And I was thinking, and like what was like very dismissive. Oh, no problem. You go Monday, bank holiday.
You'll go Monday.
Yeah, and I was like, just
my God.
This is like the way I like, you know, you're witnessing rape, you're seeing people having sexual activity, you know, there's suicide. It was like there was murder. There was a lot. It was like there's a lot of inmates. Like there was like just in this like this Chiang Mai itself, which was a small prison. There was 4,000 inmates just in this. And like the biggest prison in Europe was Walton, that had 1,500 inmates. So you can imagine the complex. Like Klong Prem had 20,000 because you had different prisons within the complex
in the
itself.
Compound.
Yeah, like Bombarton, the women's prison, then the hospital, and then Klong Prem and Lad Yao.
But it's the fact that you get used to it that I can't get my head around, because despite the fact that you've been in prison previously, this is something completely different.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that mentally?
Well, it's like you've got to adapt or you die. that's the way it is, the reality. You know, you got to adapt to the situation and your environment and just fit in and just like kind of move with it, or you're going to die. And that's
so. Was a lot of it just watching what other people were doing and following suit? Because at that point you didn't speak Thai.
No.
So when you're talking about adapt or die, like you've done that to the nth degree. You learned to speak Thai.
Yeah, but there was a few. Well, not say a lot of times. A lot of times that wanted to speak English, and there was a few that spoke, you know, like
broken English.
Yeah, it was quite fair. Like there was the odd one or two that could communicate really well. And you know, eventually, you know, you're learning them and they're learning you, and they're saying to you, "Look, I'm going to learn you a bit of Thai," which is polite. You know, pull past a Thai sapap na. So I was like, okay, because these say, look, these are feral in your cell. They're just teaching you like harsh, horrible, you know, language. You know, and I was learning like this because who teach you that? You know, he said that. He said no.
So you're scared of where you'd even take it from. You don't know who to trust. You don't know what to believe.
You know, and you say something to someone and they look at you and think, "Oh, I've said something nice. You're trying to set me up here." You know what I mean? So it was, You adapted in another way though, because obviously everything was scarce. You were obviously at that point you'd relapsed, or so you were an addict still and doing whatever it took to get what you needed. In addition to that, you learned to speak Thai. One of the things that I think is the book name homage to that as well, because it's called A Prayer Before Dawn, because one of the things that you did in order to survive and also make sure that you got fed, you got segregated into a smaller cell, was you converted to Islam. Yeah. So I used to I was in a cell called it was 83, Hong 83. The cells are called Hongs. Like Hong, but our cell that I was in was called Hong Bar. Now Bar is crazy, so it was like the crazy cell. So I got put in this cell when I went to Klong Premise in Bangkok, and it was like, yeah, the colour Nigerians, you know, kid from Singapore, you know, one Thai guy, you know, there was a kid from Australia, a kid from Canada, myself, and it was just, there was an Indian kid, he was Chanel, I remember him, he did just a mad cell, and they were all praying to different gods. And I used to like lie and just read my book, or just look around. He'd be praying to Allah, he'd be praying to Buddha, he'd be praying to a Sikh god or what have you, and they had the Christians, then they had the atheists, and it was just a quagmire of arguments all the time, because they're all trying to preach to each other, you know what I mean? There was a guy called Solomon Kurashir and Bonzo that were always fighting, but never actually physically going for it. They're just
arguments.
They're like, shoot. There were two African guys. You know, I tell you now, I fight you now, brother. And it was just ongoing. And we used to get like tethered because of the cell. They'd always be, shut up, because that cell would be on like
the noisy one.
It was crazy. It was the crazy dude. You know, I had this Indian guy. He was in for murder. And he hadn't even done it, and I believed him, to be fair. He'd met a Thai girl, and she fell in love with him, and she said he wanted to threesome, so he brought this other girl around, and she's got jealous of the other girl and killed her, you know what I mean? And then got off and left him, and he's like, so he ended up, and he was dead innocent, this kid, right? He was just dead innocent, you could see, but he used to say to me, he was just like, he was a mad sex addict, and he was just going on about, like the pig farm on Valentine's Day. He said, I was like, what? He said, on Valentine's Day we go to the big farm, jiggy with the number one pig. And I was like, is he serious? Yeah. He said, he's mad, you know what I mean? You know, he was forever like playing with himself. But
I'm laughing at this, but this was your life.
Yeah, but he was like so funny. I mean, if I hadn't laughed in that, I just found it really, really comical. It was just, but I needed to get out at the same time.
Well, you done. It was just over 3 years there.
Yeah.
And then you were repatriated back to the UK.
And then I done another 8 months in Wandsworth in the UK.
Well, how difficult was that, going from one extreme to the other, basically? Because obviously you didn't even have a bed in your cells within Thailand. No bed, no pillow, no duvet, no covers, nothing.
You slept on blankets improvised like into a mattress. It was like, I'd say you had to buy a blanket. The blankets were like 200 baht, and you could only spend 200 baht a day. And I never even had that. So, you know, sometimes you get like prisoners abroad who give you 1,000 baht a month, and you could buy yourself a blanket maybe once a month until you had them all up, and then you pay someone to stitch them, and you got a mattress, and that was your ground mat, and you'd lie on that and you sleep on that, but the lights were on, so it was like sleeping with this on all night. That's, you know, the strobes on, and it was, you know, it was just difficult for the first initial period of like going there, but then you know, you become used to it.